Live there. Cool. Should be good. Let me my audio kind of kick in. For those that don't know, like whenever we're right when we start, there's always this weird like kind of couple seconds because I'm waiting for YouTube to check my audio. But we'll see, you know. So that's usually what's going on. Cool. All right. So let's do it. Week 4. We're at the final stretch of color keys, right? But before we started, I want to kind of just announce next month's or this coming month's topic, right? So we did a vote. For those that don't know, every month on the 15th we get to vote on the next topic. It was intense, to say the least. I haven't seen something that exciting in a while, so it was actually pretty wild. But level design ultimately won. So this coming March, we're going to be covering level design. So if you'd like to be part of that, right? If you'd like to kind of join in on those topics, currently we have like 20 something people and we're doing feedback for a good amount of time on Mondays. So if you'd like to be a part of that and you kind of like, want to kind of learn a little bit of what level design is, right? Obviously we're going to be covering the major ideas during the stream here, but getting the feedback is actually, I would say, a little bit more important, right? Because you actually get to apply it and try to understand it yourself, right? So if you'd like to participate in that, join the live stream plus role, I guess, in my server shop for this coming March, right? So wait a week, right? You can do it whenever, but if you wait a week, next week we'll be starting. So that's kind of when you should be kind of expecting to kind of be there if you'd like to participate. So with that in mind, yeah, right. It's gonna be a fun one. And I just want to give a heads up for everybody, right? I'm not a level designer, right? So just keep in mind, right? This isn't level design in the level design sense, right? This isn't a class where you learn hardcore level design, I guess, things. This is more of a concept art approach to level design, right? Because level design is a whole other job, right? It's a whole other career path that kind of is a whole different task in a studio or on a project or whatever. But concept artists do need to know the fundamental ideas. That way we don't mess it up whenever they give us the blockouts and things like that. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. There's more advanced level designers out there, right? I can't even put that on my resume, basically. But as a person that receives a lot of level design blockouts and, we're part of that world. These are some of the things that we have to keep in mind and some of the freedoms that we have when we get these blockouts, right? Because, you're going to get a blockout. It's literally just a bunch of cubes. There's going to be like a different colored cube and there's going to be like some various things here and there. So what I want to do is kind of show you what I like to think about and what I keep in mind as I'm progressing to kind of show you where our like restrictions are and then where our freedom is, right? So just as a preface for what level design actually is, I don't want anybody going into this thinking that they're going to learn how to be level designers and apply for jobs like that. That's not what this is. This is for concept art, or at the very least image making, right? So, but cool. If there's any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me. We can kind of talk about this more if this is right for you or not. But yeah, so this coming March. All right. So let's close that. Let's talk about this, I guess, where I kind of left off last week and then what I kind of did during the, did during the week to then ultimately end up to kind of where we're at now, right? So I think we did the Fox one, right? Last week. Let's see, let me get my red out. We did this one here, right? So pretty simply, right? It's within like maybe the first 10 minutes, right? You can kind of like, because I had all my shapes done, because I had everything kind of set up, right? We had basically the whole setup. And then after that, I was just kind of messing with atmosphere, adjusting some things here and there, overall, just kind of getting it in a better zone, right? And then essentially what I did this past week, right, was just do the same thing for all of them. Get them all to that color blockout stage. They're not 100% done, but it is close enough to where this is probably what I would submit for my first pass, right? So this is just giving you context as to like where we're at in the phase. if I got an assignment from my art director or from my production designer, right? This is what I send them. This is the first initial pass. I think there's a lot of confusion as to like kind of where we send that, because, you know, there's the grayscale blockout that we did, or there's even the graphic read blockout that we did in week 1, right? I wouldn't really send those because I would be doing this as my first step. I might be thinking about that grayscale version / the graphic read version, but I keep that in mind as I'm going. So just kind of remember that this is my first step. And then from here, if they get approved, or after I make whatever changes that my lead is asking me to make, right? I take these and then basically quote unquote finish them, right? But this isn't a full on, I guess, illustration piece, right? Color keys aren't really meant to be finished 100%. They can be. Sometimes they can be converted into a VizDev painting. If you run into that issue, or that time, like in a production where you're taking a color key to finish, I don't want to say like this, but something's usually wrong. You're probably like off schedule, or there's something kind of weird happening in your schedule, because generally speaking, these happen after the fact. These happen way later. So all the VizDev pieces, technically speaking, should have happened already, and you should already know what this location looks like, right? Because all the designs and stuff should have been done by this point. And then we make color keys. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's a good like kind of barometer as to like what's actually happening in your production. You know what I mean? Because color keys are like super far towards the end. So, but cool. Let me see. Let me do something real quick. Where's it at? There it is. Turn that on. Forgot to turn on my streamer mode. But cool. I guess with that in mind, let's do this. What's the is there any consensus as to where you guys would want to take, like, you know, what you'd want me to kind of take to finish? I'm just curious what the stream wants to do. If there's one in particular that you're like, how would you finish that? Or if, you know, I can do one of, I can pick a random one, but I like to give people a chance first, right? So let's see. I'll give you guys a second to comment that. Let's see. Let me grab my files real quick. Boom, live stream. Dang, nobody.
I think that the bottom right one, the very like
dark foresty one.
Yeah.
Nice. Alex says 2 or 3 would be cool. All right, 2 or 3. All right. So we got 2, 3, and 6. I need more votes, guys. There's we have a 1 vote tie for everything.
I want to say 5 just to make you draw a face.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I agree with 5 too. Kind of. I guess I'm curious to know like how far you would go with rendering the character in the color key context.
Well, I can show you that. Here, check this out. So, for those that don't know, I have an Instagram. Boom. Look at that, live streams Tuesdays. So, this is it. I mean, like that face right there, the one on Taigen, right? I didn't even draw that face. I just took that from the storyboard, you know. You know, a lot of it's the same thing. So it's if you're looking for like a quality bar in terms of like kind of where I would go in the color key, this is basically it, right? I can take it further. Like here, for example, these are not my drawings. These are from the board themselves. In terms of, or I think it's from the character design. I just cut them out, throw them in. And then, you know, we're pretty close. Same here, right? It's like anytime it's me, you'll notice there's not a lot of faces happening. Like right there, right? I mean, I just put like a shadow for the nose and then we kind of call it there, right? So I can do it. I absolutely can. But I will say, it's not as exciting as you might believe. But we did get 2 votes for 5. 3 votes for 5 with Louis Bonk. All right, cool. Well, let's do that. So what I want to explain, right, for this process, right, because there's a lot of paintings here, right? A lot of people don't really do 6 paintings a week, right? That's for a lot of students, that sounds ridiculous. But generally speaking, I would have all of these done within like 2 or 3 days, right? Once we get to this point. So really, I'm going to kind of show you how I speed through these things and how I create, I guess, the most efficient workflow that I possibly can. There are some things that I'm gonna have to paint, right? Because as you can tell, there are some, I guess, unique things in every scene. Like, for example, like the 5th scene there, right, with the orange flowers. There's the flowers that don't really show up anywhere else, right? But the tree does, and the that rock in the back left-hand corner, and then the character themselves. So a lot of this, it's like I'm gonna reuse a lot of these pieces, and take the do the asset sheet idea that I covered, a couple streams ago, like a lot of streams ago. So if you're kind of wondering, if you know my workflow and you're kind of wondering how I would go about this, that's what I'm doing. If you're new to watching this, right, here's how I use assets, right? So let me open that file up and we'll get started. Boom, gallery, where's it at? Let's see. All right, week 4. Okay, so, all right, I have my painting here, right? And this is kind of where, we're gonna start, I guess, breaking down what we need, right? So right now I have this painting, that there. I'm gonna turn off a lot of my foreground elements just to kind of get started, right? So do that, turn off these flowers. I'm gonna start with some of the bigger things. I know the flowers are technically speaking the biggest thing, but we're going to start with some of the background elements first because those flowers are a little more like, I guess, typical, or I guess a little like, it's just like a painting straight up, right? So with this background piece, I have some trees here, right? I have some leaves. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start painting one, right? Just take my time and start kind of building this up, right? So I made a new layer. Boom. I'm going to do this right tree right here. As we're seeing, right, there's really 3 trees plus like a bunch of ones stamped in the back. And the way I want to go about this, right, I'm going to take my time just doing one, right, maybe the next 10-15 minutes, and just start painting a tree, right? Nothing crazy. I'm going to find some reference right here. I have my my reference folder. Where's it at? Boom, icons, reference. I have location reference here. What is this? What forest was this again? This was the Yakushima forest. That's what it was. So we're just gonna like look at this and see what kind of trees we notice, right? Because at this point, we know that there's a tree back there, and generally speaking, you'd probably have assets, right, from production where they're like, hey, these are the kind of trees like the VizDev artist would have designed the trees out for this location already. So that's one thing that you actually have working for you. In a production, half of this stuff, actually all of it, would have already been designed. The flower, the tree, the character, and the rock. At the very least, all of those would have separate callouts. In this case, we don't have that, so we're gonna have to do that ourselves. But that's kind of what we're looking at here. See, there's a lot of moss, and they're actually smoother trees. If you actually look at them, a lot of the trees are rounder. You know how like an oak is very like barky, right? It's very like rough. These are like very smooth, like covered in moss, right? So that's what I'm gonna kind of be trying to hit here. Not like smooth, but they're rounder than usual. Oh, that's really cool. I like that. All right, let's do something like that. All right. So, boom. Oh, today's gonna be a pretty chill day in terms of like kind of what we're gonna be talking about, and it's gonna be a lot of painting, right? So if you guys have questions, hit me up. Like this is kind of like the opportunity to ask any questions that you're looking for, or kind of get feedback on anything that you want to talk about. I do have some topics I'd love to talk about, same ones from last week that we didn't really get to, but I'd like to talk about whatever is bothering you first. So if there's anybody wants to say anything, just let me know. Boom. Let's see, what does that tree look like?
What's bothering me is those topics that are bothering you. What's up, man?
Well, no, like it's not like bothering me, but I have conversations with like students and stuff just throughout the week. Here, I'll pull up my Notion board right here. Like, and I just write them down, right? There's students that, well, because I teach a couple of classes, and then I do mentorships and various things like that. So there's a lot of topics that actually get brought up throughout the week, and like I just write them down, because half of them it's like, oh yeah, I think everybody in the world should probably know these things. So it's a lot of that, right? If you're wondering like where these, like I'm not just making this up. This is just like somebody asked me a question during class, during stream. They reached out, whatever, right? And I just, I just leave it anonymous. I just say, oh, my friend or whoever, right? But obviously, the people that asked me, they're here too. They're listening. They're even, some of them are even live, and like I just talk about it, So but let me see. There it is. Cool. All right, we'll talk about that later. We'll get there. I want to hear what you guys want to talk about. There's like, I think for me, it's kind of like whenever there's this idea that I kind of like to do whenever I demo. I like to focus a lot on feedback, right? Especially in my classes. I spend a lot more time giving like paint overs than actual like, I guess doing paintings themselves. I mean, I do them as well. But the reason for that, the reason I like doing it that way is because I don't run into the same issues that a lot of students run into, right? I don't say it like that, but whenever you're, I guess when you've been doing this for a second, right? There's a lot of like, I don't really run into those problems anymore like I used to, right? Because there's I figured out a process, it works for me, so on and so forth. I don't get these types of jobs, or that that I would have an issue with some of them, right? But I think with like whenever I talk about like actual student work or actual things that people I guess have issues with, I feel like it hits harder. I feel like because it's more relevant, right? Because I don't really have graphic read troubles as much anymore, right? I don't have some of the, and you kind of lose that relatability, in my opinion, where like you ever see a professional do a demo and then they just like blaze through it. It's like amazing, or it's really cool looking, whatever, right? And then you try it and you're like, oh, none of that came out the way that I intended, right? I mean, that's basically most demos kind of go that way, right? But it's just like, because there's a whole like there's like decades sometimes of experience behind that. Like I remember when I was in school, this was back in 2014, right? 2015. John Park would be doing these demos, right? Where he would just kind of like, it'd be either a workshop or in his class, and he would just go, right? And at the time, people were really freaking out about the mixer brush, right? It was like the mixer brush was like the new thing. It looked all painterly and cool, this and that, so on and so forth, right? And it was cool. It was actually really cool. And then he would like zero difficulty, like no diff, just like make a painting and it would look insane. Like a lot of the stuff that he's kind of doing now, it kind of, not that it started then, but he was developing that more painterly look at that time, as far as I'm aware. And like, it was crazy because he would just do it and you're like, oh shit, that's amazing. And then you go home and try it and it's just trash, just straight up. Like the worst thing that I had ever seen, basically, right? Because you're like, what the hell happened, And John was basically doing it blindfolded. I remember he lost a file one time. Like we were in his class, and then when you click, I think it's Command W, basically on your short key where it like auto closes. He clicked it on accident, and then it closed the file, and then he just like within the last like 30 minutes of class, because it had already been like an hour of a demo at that point, he just did it again. And he's like, all right, cool. Just back to where we were, right? And I was like, what the hell? He just like within seconds. It was incredible. But then I went home and tried it. Of course, it was trash. It wasn't, anywhere near that. But there's a lot of issues that I ran into that I had no idea. But then I had teachers where like they would do a demo on my painting, right? They would be like, oh, this is how I would fix it. And I think for me that was a really big deal, because not only am I getting like, it's hard to like know how to translate information sometimes, so long story short, I was trash. So, and it's nice seeing somebody fix your work. Tony, you put Control W as zoom in, zoom out? That's crazy, dude. The reason that's crazy, the reason I say that is because if you switch that on your Photoshop, when you're on a different Photoshop, you run the risk of just accidentally clicking it because now you're used to clicking it. I don't map those keys to anything, because no matter what, like, because I'll be painting on somebody else's file, right? Like, because at work or something, you'll be giving feedback. So instead of, sometimes you'll just sit at their desk or whatever, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, can you do the thing? And then you go in there and you're like, you just instinctively do it. I don't think about like scaling my brush up, because you do it so often, right? And you'll just like close a file on accident because their short key isn't your short key, basically. That's the issue that I'll run into a lot. So I try not, like, those keys I don't map to anything. It's just danger zone. I don't, because once you lose a file for a client, bro, it's game over. It's not a good time. Oh, Louis asked a question. Now let's see. In a smaller production, like in an indie game where all the work usually goes to less people, what would you recommend to an artist that is doing all the visuals by themselves? I guess you're saying like in a smaller production where you have to do, like, you kind of have to wear multiple hats. How would I handle that? Right? Is that what I'm getting there? I'll wait for you to type in the thing.
Hey.
Yo.
Well, my question is, like, right now I'm working in a game with some friends.
Okay.
And I'm like the only artist in the team.
Uh-huh.
So the other one is a developer, and the other one is like the writer, doing all the story and all of that. So I'm like the one in charge of all the visuals.
Okay.
So, like, yeah, what would you recommend to me doing like this process that you are doing? Because you said like that a team will give you like all the information, like the assets or something like that.
Yeah.
Production figure.
I guess in this case, right, like, we're doing color keys, so it's a little bit different than kind of what you're talking about, because this wouldn't be, I would say, like, maybe the normal, I guess, thing that you would do in a small production like that, especially like in the beginning or something like that, right? This is something towards like the end, right? So for those that don't know when, I guess, color keys kind of come into the mix, right? Usually when the location's fully designed, right? And then, they have like a layout from the storyboards and everything. And basically what you're doing is you're trying to show, like, people towards the end, like compositors, colors, this and that, what the color of the scenes are going to look like, right? And so whenever you're doing this, you actually should have all the designs already. You don't want to be designing, like in this case, this is just like me, on YouTube doing things, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's a level of, this isn't exactly how we would do things in production, right? Just because this isn't normal the way I'm going about this, right? So, just want to make that clear before we talk about the next step, right? Because we would be in production, right? You would have ideally some, designs already for that space. You would have a keyframe or a VizDev piece or something that says like, oh yeah, this is the type of forest she's in. This is the type of place that we're kind of designing. And then we go from there, right? So, if you don't have these assets already, what I would say is slow down, right? Kind of bring that tempo down if possible. And then just decide, hey, what does that tree look like? And then just design that out. Do a sheet of trees, do a sheet of rocks, right? Like a call out sheet, right? Where it's like a bunch of trees kind of just lined up, right? Just to figure out the textures and things. You wouldn't really be doing this on the fly, because the point of this step is to understand what the general kind of, forms and things are going to be kind of colored like. It's not like you're not trying to, redesign anything here. You know what I'm saying? So that would be the way I would kind of, that's how the thing should go. But in a real life setting, sometimes that's not an option, right? And I understand that. So the way I would go about this is exactly what I'm doing now. because, you know, maybe you're doing a color key like this and you're like, okay, cool. I don't really know what everything's gonna be like, right? Like I don't really have a strong idea quite yet, but I do know there's a forest like this. This is the kind of shot we're going for. Now's the time to slow down. It might take you a little bit longer as well, but you know, now's the time to slow down and really figure out what the design looks like and how this thing operates, right? Because essentially, that's what I'm doing here, right? I don't have the design, which, you know, I probably should have, but you know, this isn't a real production. But I would just spend the time and make this tree look the way I want it to look. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I get it. Thanks.
Yeah. It's just like, you know, you have to kind of like designate like certain times for certain things. Especially like if you're the only artist, sometimes, you know, it can kind of get bottlenecked at you, and you'll kind of make some decisions where, you know, you have to design some things ahead of time, or you have to kind of do some things on the fly. But just remember, like, you know, design and storytelling are two different things, right? I mean, you know, they lead into each other, but there's a design phase and there's I guess a illustration phase, right? There's times where we're just painting and there's times where we're actually thinking, and we try our best not to do those at the same time, right? That's why a lot of the time during this whole color key, I guess, month, I haven't really talked about form language. I haven't really talked about a lot of those other ideas because they're not really important right now. What's important is the composition and the storytelling elements that we're choosing to kind of cover here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, sweet.
Thanks for all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Something I want to kind of bring up for everybody, right? What I'm doing here, right? I'm just painting a tree, right? But what I want you to keep in mind is the tendency to just go like this, where it's like, okay, cool, brown tree, great, you know, brown, right? Or even in the same value range, brown, right? Try not to do that, because what you did was you set up your color key to look a certain way here, right? And as long as it still kind of looks this way, which I should probably save it out. Here, I'll do this real quick. Just so we have a better idea of kind of what we're looking at here. But you don't want to leave the color space that you've already designed, right? Because now we're just focusing on the tree by itself. There's a tendency for us to just be like, oh yeah, you know, I can make this tree like the way it needs to be or whatever, right? Because now there's this really strong bluish tint on everything, right? And I would say just resist as much as you can to make that, I guess, a more natural brown color, or I guess a more accurate, I guess, color, because now you're going to be changing the way that your, I guess, your design is. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to be changing that color space, and when in reality, right, that's the one thing that you should not have changed, because you spent all that time designing it already. You know what I'm saying? So. Dang, you guys like setting like Control Q and all that stuff, or Control W to actual keys. That's dangerous. You can tell who's lost a file and who hasn't. It's there's a lot of things that I'll try not to do. Like, I think for me, because I had like teammates that would like remap all of Photoshop, right? Where, you know, it's just I guess there's there's the, you know, you want to remap everything to like the left hand side or whatever it is, right? I guess the efficiency of it all, right? I really try not to do any of that, because if I have to sit on somebody else's computer, you essentially kind of like just lose, I guess, any functionality, right? It's kind of like if you're like a Windows or a Mac user, right? And you hop on the opposite kind of machine, right? Just having Control and Alt in like the opposite kind of areas really messes with you. And it's the same thing with like, you know, now you're remapping the entire keyboard, and then now it's really hard to give feedback. I think because I because I'll like sit down at someone's computer like often, not as much recently, just because work remote and all that. But like before, we'd like sit down at people's computers and help them out or do whatever, and it would like just cripple you if you just I can't give you feedback anymore. Just be, you know, it's like just send it to me. We'll go to my desk or whatever, you know. And it just makes things harder. So I try to leave everything pretty stock. There are some things that I will change, just because, you know, I'm not that crazy, but there's a level of I try not to change as much as I can. Or like there's a lot of like Blender tutorials that will kind of like remap everything for you. I really try not to do that. I mean, some people really enjoy that. Some people are pretty good at it, but some people, like a lot of people that are better than I am, do that. But I just can't. I won't do that. Because now,
what are some?
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I was just came to mind. I was, for those of us who haven't ever worked in a studio in person, if you have any things that come to mind that like surprised you, or you know, things that would be helpful to know if you were going into that experience for the first time.
Yeah. I think something that everybody should strive to do, right? Have a clean file. Because right now, if you're a student, there's no reason for you not to paint on top, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like when you create a new layer and this and that. When you go work at a studio, the main thing that you need to understand is that you are not the only one that's going to touch that file, right? It's inevitable, right? Somebody, whether you know it or not, is going to be the ones somebody's going to fix this file, do something to it, make a quick adjustment. Like for example, I'll do a painting, like a color key like this, and sometimes my art director won't find it worth it to bother me to make an adjustment. They'll just be like, oh no, I got it, don't worry about it. You know, just send me your file, right? Even when I was working with people as a creative lead, I would be like, hey, you know, don't worry about it. Work on the next thing. Let me fix it, because it's faster for me to fix it than it is to like tell somebody how to fix the exact like small type of thing. It's not like a you know, take the character, move them left or right. It's more like just hue shift slight things, and it takes my eye to kind of do it, right? Or a better person's eye, essentially, right? And so when you get their file, like it will make or break your day, depending on how good or bad it is, right? I've had people where the file is like amazing. It's like, dude, I needed to fix this tree back here, right? Like I'll fix like you know, one of these trees or something, or I'll get rid of some of this or make it less dense. Beautiful. It's amazing. Everything works out nicely. Everything's solid. And then there's times where it's like, there's like these flowers up here, like in the front. Oops. There you go. Like these flowers in the front, and they're like merged with like these trees in the back. And then it's like cut out of these trees. Like they'll mask out the tree in front. They'll do shit like this, where they'll take this and they'll mask out these flowers. Where the hell is it? They'll like do this, right? And they'll mask it out so you can still see through it, so you can get to the flowers underneath, right? They'll do like stuff like that. And I'm like, what are you doing? That is crazy talk, right? And it happens so often because they're just, it's just the way I work. It's just, you know, it was faster just to do it that way. Don't. If you're somebody that does that, fix your life. Stop messing with the rest of the studio, right? Because it'll take like a 5-second revision and turn it into like an 8-hour process. And like, it's terrible. It's the worst. And it's not like that big a deal to where you might get fired over it, but everyone, I shit you not, is going to hate you. Right. And that, like, I will literally not work with some people just because I'm like, I can't handle their files. Like I don't want to have to handle their files. Right. So that's a big one. I would say just get better at file management. And that's why, like, for those that know me, for those that like have seen me work / you know, I guess, you know, taking a class with me, right? You'll kind of see this where I'm like super layering things out, right? Where like everything has a layer to it. Everything has a purpose. Everything is adjustable. And sometimes I'll get this question like, oh, that feels like overkill. Why don't you just kind of paint on one layer? I even got this comment. I think it was like, one of the few comments I've gotten on one of my videos where it's like, why so many layers, this and that. It's like, because there's always the need for adjustments. There's always somebody that is going to be touching the file, doing something to it. And I have to be able to give them something that's workable. And especially because if you're working at a place and they hand your file off to a vendor, right? For example, at Netflix, we had a vendor studio that was creating the product, right? We didn't like animate everything and paint all the backgrounds and stuff. We painted some of them, but not all of them. And they would take my files and just take it apart, put it in there, clean things up, right? And it speeds everything up. And I'm sure it saved thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Just to have that ability to kind of do that. But if your file management sucks, it just makes things so much worse. It slows everything down. Everybody hates you. And chances are they actually might not hire you again. They're not going to fire you on the spot. That's really not something to be fired about. I don't know if they can, right? But it is something that is a pretty big deal. So I would try not to do that. What else? What else is there? I made a big deal out of that one. That's a huge deal though. There's a lot of splitting the work. So for example, when I first started, or even like later on, whenever I would work in a production, right, where they're like, hey, we need this painting done by tomorrow. And you're like, hey, it's a matte painting, and you assigned it like an hour ago, right? Basically, it's ridiculous, right? Like just dumb timelines, right? And they're not doing it on purpose. At least I don't think they are. But a lot of times they'll assign multiple artists for the painting. Hey, you take care of the character, you take care of this like kind of mid-ground, and then this other artist will take care of the background, and then everybody kind of come together, right? That happens more often than you think. So there's a lot of that, and that's kind of, for one, that's where the file management actually really comes in handy, because now you're able to coordinate and do all those things. But I guess the main thing I'm trying to convey here is that a lot of artists, when they first start, are under this impression that, everybody handles their own files. Everybody kind of does just their own work, right? But that couldn't be farther from the truth. Oftentimes, more often than not, you're collaborating with somebody, and not even just in a direction sense, but they're literally painting. So you have to match style, right? There's a show style that you have to you have to hit. And so they'll, I guess multiple artists need to look like one person did it. I think that's a big thing. I guess I wasn't really prepared for. You kind of have to learn. What else is there? As we kind of go through the stream, I'll see if there's anything else. Those are the few main ones, right? I think because a lot of it's like just understanding what the expectations are, But yeah, as we go through this stream, I'll bring up more as I think about it. Let's see. There's a big chat in the thing. I'm just wondering if there's any questions in there. Yeah, Ari says massive +1 to clean and organize files. Yeah, because sometimes, your project manager or whoever is going to actually take that file and be like, oh yeah, they need to sometimes they need to do something, and they just hand it off to somebody that knows Photoshop. It's not even necessarily an artist half the time. And if you have a file that's just trash, oh my God, it just makes it so much worse. And because oftentimes we're actually not tasked with sending files off, right? There's in a production setting, us artists, we do the paintings and we format it to whatever the team kind of is looking for, like the naming convention / the way kind of things are, right? But we do hand it off to PMs or this and that to basically production people to take care of, whether they send it off to the client or they organize it for meetings, whatever it is. They do a lot of work. They're the backbones of production, so treat them well. But what I'm trying to say is sometimes a artist that's not of your caliber essentially is handling your file, and you want to make it as easy as possible because the these people are going to be using it and handling it. And if they can't handle it, right, then it kind of slows things down just because, you know, they have to get an artist to do this. And now you're wasting time and money because you didn't name something right. You know, it's such a small problem. It's very similar, like the idea of like grids, you know, it's like, just put a grid on there. Just do it clean the first time, you know? I get a lot of resistance when it comes to the way I paint or the way I teach, just because there's, I don't want to say I don't want to say it's non-artistic, but it is very, I don't know, processy, right? It feels very like digital painting versus like actual painting. I don't know if that makes any sense, but there is a level of, it doesn't feel as artistic as it could be, right? Especially when you start, or you're somebody that's used to painting like super loose, right? That's, I think it's a little off-putting sometimes, but once you actually see what we do in production, the stuff that I do actually makes a lot more sense. You can see why somebody like me would paint like this, right? Because, you know, you get revisions, you get all sorts of stuff, so. Name your files. Yeah, naming conventions are actually a huge deal. Something that people, I guess, don't take too seriously, right? Because you get the, you know, final, fuck that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you know, it's just it's this endless list of like, you know, just bad naming conventions, essentially, right? Try not to do stuff like that. Like for me, for example, you know, if you even look up here, Livestream, February 02, right? Thumbnails 05 V1 KV. All those things kind of mean something. And it's, you know, because now when I look for my files, right, I know exactly where they are. I know exactly how to find them. And there's a naming convention that I've set up, or, you know, I just learned this from my productions, right? You know, I didn't name my files. That's, you know, I should probably be better about that. I normally would, but especially the file name, because when you're in production and somebody else is looking for it, because there's thousands. Imagine this, right? You're at a studio and you're working, you know, you're doing a project, right? And you did 50, 60 paintings, right? That's not that crazy. That's actually on the low side for most productions, right? But then a year, 2 years down the line, right? You're going to be in production like a year or 2 years, especially in animation, right? Somebody has to go find that file. They're like, oh, hey, can we get a quick change on this? The main character's design has changed since, you know what I mean? Like, just production happened, right? And so now we got to go find it. And you named it, you know, final +1, or, you know, like Untitled 1 or whatever the fuck, you know? And that is an issue, right? So it's a lot of like just being professional about your naming convention. And it's something where we all say like, oh yeah, in a production, I would do it differently, you know, or I wouldn't do it. I only do this because it's at home. I promise you, you're going to do it because that's what you do, right? You don't like, because once you get into like a production setting, you would think that a lot of people kind of turn on the professionalism. It doesn't happen, right? Or at the very least, it's not enough. From what I've noticed, it's a lot of like, oh yeah, you know, I'm sorry, I forgot. You know, it's because you make the habit of not doing it already, so you just don't do it generally. You know, it's just who you are at that point, right? How you handle the little things is how you handle the big things, right? So there's a lot of that, a lot of like formatting things and stuff like that. So what else we got? Yeah. Always number your versions V1, V2, V3, right? You know, 05, thumbnails 05, V1, KV, right? So this is the 5th thumbnail, right? From here, right? This is the 5th one. And we're at V1. And when I save this will go into V2, right? I haven't done it yet. We haven't saved or anything yet, but it will, generally speaking, go to V2. So they'll kind of like know, right? So little things like that. Those are actually really big deals. That's probably more important than you guys watching me paint this tree right now, to be honest. All right, who's got questions? I got a couple things, but I do want to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about first. Dude, look at that tree, bro. Look at that. Sick. The cool part about all this, you can be like it's nice because like I work super clean in the beginning, right? It's, you know, like I guess very like hard edged, right? But now this is kind of where the artistic eye kind of comes in. You can be a little more like, you know, I guess gestural with things, right? Or do whatever, because you're already most of the way there. You already have a lot of this where, you know, it's you don't break out of this silhouette and you're probably gonna be okay, you know? So this is kind of how I go about it, right? And we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be hopefully, you know, pretty awesome by the end of it. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of this. You'll see how fast this goes. I am spending a lot of time on this one tree, but you'll see. Hopefully you'll see. Shit. Where's my grass brush? Boom. I'm a grass 6. Nope. Grass 5. Nope. Grass 4. Yeah. Grass 4 is the way. So I teach a lot of classes for those that don't know. I guess everybody here should know that by now at least. But I make brushes. Every time I get a question where it's like, hey, how do you make brush? And I'll like I'll just do a quick demo on it. And then there's my, you know, all of these like cloud 1, 2, 3. It's because people kept asking me, oh, how do you make that cloud? And I make a different one or something, or grass 7, right? A lot of people like grass brushes because it actually does a lot of work for you. And so that's why there's like 5, 7 grass brushes. Dude, look at that. And you're like, this detail is free, baby. Let's go. So while everybody in the Discord is done being shy, I'll start talking about my some of the things I want to talk about. I had I think it was in one of the hangouts. We were talking about the importance of story, right? I guess like we're talking about, I guess, just like why story matters, right? Because a lot of times, especially, you know, some of the students that I'll get, there's a lot of like, oh yeah, you know, I can, you know, I'm trying to learn 3D, I'm trying to do this thing, whatever, right? There's a lot of that. And I guess my classes tend to be like intermediate level, right? Intermediate to maybe advanced sometimes, but generally speaking, intermediate. So I kind of get this weird level of student where you kind of know some things, but you don't quite know how they translate sometimes, right? There's like, you know, when you first start, generally speaking, very beginner level students, right? Most of them, I won't say all of them, most of them kind of just absorb whatever you say, right? Like whenever I get a beginner level student, whatever I say, generally speaking, they'll try to like really hone in on what I'm saying. They're like, cool, right? That makes a lot of sense. But when you get an intermediate level student, you'll get the one where it's like, oh, but this person said that. Or but I learned this, you know, and it's a lot of that and then so a lot of times, especially now, I'll get a lot of like, oh yeah, so you know, I'm trying to learn 3D, or you know, how important is it to know 3D and this and that. And for me, I guess I don't know, I have a reputation for, you know, just trashing 3D a lot, right? I mean, maybe it's hard to tell from the past couple streams that I've been doing where it's just like a lot of 3D, not this month, but like, you know, previous month and then the streams before that, right? And, you know, I kind of talk about it a lot where I'm like, you don't really need to know it, or it's not really that important, right? And we're talking about it in one of the hangouts that we were doing. I was just talking about how, like, you know, once you get to a certain level, a lot of artists that I know, they start understanding what I mean. Because when you start, it's always like, oh, I need to paint better. I need to draw better. I need to get my quality up, because, you know, generally speaking, you're not able to kind of get the thing in your head out onto paper, right? Because, or, you know, whatever, canvas, right? And that's an issue, because if you can't communicate your ideas, it doesn't matter what your idea anymore is, right? Because you just can't communicate it. But eventually you get to this point to where you're probably able to say what you need to say, generally speaking, right? You probably have I guess a strong, or I guess an ability to communicate at a certain level, right? You don't need to be the best artist. You don't need to be the person that can paint or draw the best, but you do need to have a certain level to kind of get you there, right? That's why, for example, you know, some of the best artists in the world, right, exists, and I'm still able to find work, right? Because, you know, I can't paint as well as some, I can't 3D model as well as some, but the reason I'm able to still find work relatively consistently is because, you know, there's something else that I'm focusing on, right? Because for a good amount of time, there's a lot of a lot of thinking where, like, especially right now, where it's like, oh, I have to learn 3D, I have to get really good at it, right? But the hard part about it is you kind of start getting to this point to where it's like, who can press render harder? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, who can render the best? Who can like get the best settings? You know what I mean? And it's just like, a lot of that doesn't matter, you know? Like, yeah, you got to know how to do it, right? There's a certain level of like, hey, I got to know 3D, I got to do these things. But after a while, it doesn't actually matter, right? Because what you're saying is basically nothing, right? Because, you know, you're gonna make a painting where, like, and we see this all the time, right? Where it's like I don't say a painting, like a 3D render, where it's like a desert landscape, and then the pyramid that you got from a kit bash off of Jama's website or whatever, or Jama's like character dude that you put into a scene, click render, send it out, right? And it's like, dude, I did that. It's like, I mean, yeah, I guess technically you did do that. But you're not actually saying anything with it. You know, there's no like real message here. And in a production setting, you actually can't even do that. You know what I mean? Like, when you're a student, you can, right? You absolutely can. Because nobody cares. Not nobody cares about your work, but nobody cares if you used a kit bash from somewhere, right? But in a production, you actually cannot do that because it's not theirs, right? It's not, you know, unless the studio like bought something and you're doing like normal New York or something like that, right? But generally speaking, we have to design the buildings, we have to design the vehicles, we have to design the people. And there's no kit bash for that, right? Because if there is a kit bash for it, you're not a good designer, right? So you kind of start realizing, like, oh, I have to learn how to design, I have to learn how to do these things, because that's what is expected of us, right? Our ability to design, storytell, and convey an idea. And oftentimes there's so much focus on just how hard can I render? You know what I mean? Like, how photoreal can this look? How many kit bashes can I buy? You know, how many photo textures can I throw into this? And in reality, you get to a studio setting, they're like, hey, can you draw something? You know, I had a meeting with a client a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to them, and then they're like, hey, can we see some? Because they were looking, the recruiter person I was talking to, they're looking for like 3D things, which, you know, like I said before, I do use 3D. I know 3D, not to some degree, but, you know, I'm proficient with it, right? And so I brought a portfolio showing them, hey, this is kind of what I do. This is what I can do. You know, what are you kind of looking for? And then the art director straight up goes, hey, do you have any sketches? You know what I mean? I'm like, I was like, I don't have it in this one because your recruiter asked for 3D models. And then I had to basically make another one, even though they were looking for, you know, somebody that can, like, you know, 3D model. All the paperwork that I had said modeler. They're looking for somebody that can concept model, right? I was like, yeah, cool. So you would think you showing up with models makes sense, right? And it did. That is kind of what they're looking for, but they were also looking for someone that can design and somebody that can actually do something with these models, right? And I think that is the important part. I rag on, like, you know, just not needing 3D a lot. And, you know, there's a degree of, you probably need to know it for sure, but I guess there's so much focus on that. There's so much like emphasis on the ability to render, ability to know these things. But in reality, you know, it's not really what we do, right? Even some of the best modelers that I know, that I've taught or whatever, and I'll kind of ask them how work's been or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, we've been doing a lot of ideation. We've been doing a lot of just loose sketches, right? And because when you're a student, you don't really realize what production's like, because when you work in a production setting, right? Generally speaking, not always. Some places do require concept modelers mostly, but most productions have a modeling team, right? There's a whole 3D team that's there, and they just do that. You know what I mean? They just know how to do this because that's what they do, right? They model, right? That's their job. And so they don't really need your models. So now you're like, oh, but I'm really good at that thing. So what are you going to do, right? You just get fired essentially because you don't know how to draw. You know what I mean? You don't know how to design very well, or, you know, it's like, I usually buy kit bashes. I can't do this. You know what I mean? Or, you know, like the quality really drops, and that's a big issue, right? And the reason like we kind of brought up the importance of stories, because like when we design, just like what we're doing here, where like, you know, when I brought this up, like all these sketches, it's not just a bunch of paintings. The compositions could be better, right? There's a lot of stuff that could be better about this, but right now, there you can, like, from what I've been telling you for the last couple of weeks, there's a story here, there's a design here, there's a reason for this composition to do a certain thing, and that's what we focus on, because now this just gets handed off to the modeler because they have the assets, they built the trees, they have the environment all laid out, they have all these things, they have the camera angle, and so now they just need, you know, I guess the color, lighting, and design, right? And that's, you know, that's really about it, you know. So whenever you're trying to figure out like, hey, should I really put a lot of time into modeling? Should I really put a lot of time into painting? Or designing? You should always put time into design, right? You can learn modeling pretty quickly, right? Within, you know, I would say, I don't know, like within a year, if you really tried, you could probably get to a proficient level with modeling. But I can't say the same thing with design, right? So yeah, just things we're talking about. I think there's it kind of gets lost on a lot of the students that I kind of interact with. Not everybody, but you know, sometimes it does. So real quick, I have a tree here, right? It's a tree's treeing, right? And so I just duplicated it onto a new page, and we're gonna make this an asset sheet. So if you don't know what an asset sheet is, basically it's just a new document that has the piece that you painted on. That way, when you take this, you can just kind of drop it into your Photoshop file again without messing with it, right? So for example, I have this new document here. I'm gonna grab this tree, drop it in, and I have the same tree again, right? So this is kind of where I'm going with this. If you haven't seen me do it before, that's how I'm doing it, right? I'm gonna save this out. I'm gonna call it assets. And then I'm gonna put this on my second monitor. You'll kind of see me dropping things in as I go, but this is where the fun begins, right? Check this out. So I spent a good amount of time painting that one tree. I think like 40 minutes longer than I promised. But check this out. So I have that other silhouette here, right? Because there's two trees here. I only focused on one. But you put that in there, I mean, it's not done, but it's like there, you know? And so all I have to do now is go in here, fix some of these branches because they're looking a little bit weird, right? They're kind of like, they're kind of thin from the lassoing or whatever. Hold up, hold the phone. There you go. Yeah, there you go. So I'm just gonna fix those branches, right? Just boom. You can even add more to it if you feel like it. And you're kind of like, I'm able to use a lot of these details to help inform my my painting, right? And I can use my same grass brush, grass 4. Yeah, it was grass 4. Right now we get a lot of these details back. The ones, you know, some of these like more natural kind of silhouette breaks, right? Something that feels a little more mossy, right? And then from here, right, we didn't finish the whole tree, but I mean, it's almost there. You can like scale this up, you can stretch it out, do what you need to do. And then at this point, the painting's not done, but you're most of the way there. Now all you got to do is just fix things, right? Just take this piece, you know, you kind of add that light side, whatever it is you want to do. But now I don't have to spend so long painting that one tree. I can just, you know, just copy, paste, and you're done, right? And you get pretty close. And especially because like a lot of this is like, you know, pretty quick. Once we have the 80%, right? It starts looking pretty finished really quickly. And so with that one tree, now we have two trees within a short amount of time. I'll start getting rid of some of the more obvious details. You know what I mean? I'll kind of start painting on top. Like some of those like folds and bends and stuff are specific to the other tree, right? But I'll just kind of like, you know, just paint it out, change it, do what I need to do to make this look a little more unique than it did, right? So that's what we're doing here. Boom, pow. Look at that. Easy, dude. Sick. And then, you know, you bet your ass we're going to do that again, right? All we got to do, drops into the foreground tree. And now, right, dude, 3 trees for the price of 1, right? Easy. And, you know, just follow it wherever it needs to go. And you're pretty much there. So now let's turn back all those effects and show you kind of where we were at, right? So now, you know, I have some leaves I gotta clean up and stuff like that. But you can already see how now, see the background right there? It already looks so much better, right? So we're gonna do that. The flowers, obviously it's the same trick, but that's it. This is how we finish. This is how we take things to a better completion. And check this out. This applies to everything. So I'm gonna open up my other file. Week 4. Let's open up. Let's do this one right here. Wait. This one? Yeah, let's do this one. Give it 1 second. Hold the phone. All right. So we have this file here, right? Pretty cool. I have this this tree right here, and all I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn off some of this lighting here. All right, where's that tree at? There it is. All right, grab this. Boom. Right? And you see how the color is a little bit off just because I was doing it in a different file that was lit a little bit differently, right? But all you got to do at this point, darken it down, do what you need to do to it, right? It needs to be a little warmer because this scene is warmer compared to the other one. And you're like 90% there, right? And then we're going to spam the hell out of this. This is the one tree that I'm going to do, or, you know, there might be a couple trees here and there. But now you have a consistent form language between all of your trees, right? Because it's the same damn tree. You know, it's something where this is such a powerful trick to finish everything fast, because now I don't have to paint a tree anymore, right? I painted one tree really well, spent 40 minutes, half the time talking shit, but you know, I did get a lot of it done in that 40 minute, and then I just spam it everywhere else. I just have to do the ground plane once, right? I just have to do some of these branches. You see how like there's a weird cutout there? Just got to fix that. But you know, we just spend our time doing this cleanly 1 or 2 times, and then you're done. There's a rock in the back left-hand corner on the main image that I'm doing right now. That same rock, it's gonna show up here, right? Same thing. It's the same piece. All you gotta do is clip it in. And this is why we work the way we do. We work in super clean layers, right? Layer it out very efficiently. This way we have a silhouette that we designed, that we purposefully put there to fill out a certain shape. And then everything inside of that, it's whatever. You know what I mean? A lot of the texture can just be what it is. And you're basically, by the time you finish texturing everything out, you're like 90% there. And then some atmosphere effects and stuff like that, and you're basically done. But for a color key, this is really good because you actually don't have to take color keys to finish. You know, you don't actually have to paint the whole thing like an illustration, because it's not an illustration, right? It's a tool that they use in production to understand what the scenes are supposed to be doing, right? So as long as they know what's happening here, a lot of these details that we're doing here, right? It's not really necessary, but usually it looks a little bit better. And you can kind of do something a little higher quality a lot faster, you know? So. All right, cool. So with that explained, let's start running. All right, we're just gonna go. Let's see. Same thing, right? Let's just make this, boom. Unlock that, do some of that. Bro, we're almost there. Grass 4, right? All you have to do, as well as like when you start like kind of moving things forward, make sure you're paying attention to what those things are, right? So grass 4 had a certain size on those back trees, right? Just make sure that you're scaling things up as you're kind of coming forward. It's more design thinking as a whole, but you know, you're kind of, you know, you want to do things with that in mind, right? You don't want to just do it kind of blindly, because if you do, you'll kind of like miss some scale cues and things like that. So, and then they ask you, dude, you painted all that? You like took these color keys to finish? You're like, yeah, man. Pay me extra. Nah, don't say that, but it looks good. I will say it does a lot of the work, and you don't have to. It does that way. You don't have to do a lot of the work, right? The more work you can get done once, just the better life is. You know what I mean? So, dude, that tree freaking done, man. Look at that. I'm just gonna like kind of mess with some stuff here, and then like, what else do we have to do, dude? There's nothing else. Look at that. Take some of these bluish colors, get this cooler side down, right? And this is like, you know, prop painting. This is just like, you know, just making things look better, right? Because now, check this out. You know, everything looks pretty good, right? You're like, dude, so much detail back there. And obviously, you know, there's a lot of big flowers kind of like covering things here, right? And you do want to be careful of that, where you don't want to be painting too much, because for example, in this scene, that top half of the tree, the reason I did do it is because we have 6 other paintings or 5 other paintings that do have the whole tree. So I did kind of, I guess I did that for a purpose. But if you never actually see the top of the tree, like for example, the top canopy, I'm never going to paint that, you know? So there's a level of efficiency and there's an understanding that you need to hit when it comes to like actually doing this, right? Like you don't want to do any unnecessary work. So if you're painting something you actually never see again, or you don't even see it in the first place, there's no reason to do that, right? But in this case, I will be seeing it in other ones, so I spent a little more time on that. So cool. Let's roll. Look at that. That's funny looking. Where's my tree 1? Oh, dude. You guys have any questions? Anybody want to say anything? Just curious. Boom. Flip X, flip Y. That's what I want. Make a new layer. Boom. Turn that. I'm just trying to get rid of that like 90-degree angle in there, because you know a lot of this is like you can just kind of fake that. Boom. Take that, flip horizontal. And like, I'm just kind of cleaning some of this up. And the reason for that is because I'm going to be using this in other pieces as well. Just like we were talking about before, it's a lot of like, you know, reusing things as much as possible. And some of this doesn't quite make sense as to like kind of where it is right now. But it doesn't actually have to, because we don't actually see it, right? We see some of it and the pieces work according to the comp. But when we get to some of these other ones, I do want that whole piece to kind of feel nice. So I'm going to do it once here. That way I don't have to like do it again. Just a little bit of like forward thinking is kind of what we're doing here. This way, like when I move this, you don't actually see any like weird shapes. Oops. Boom. Let's grab this. Cut that out real quick. Yeah, cut. Yeah, so, you know, there's like a bottom edge right there. We'll fix that. Like throw this behind the tree. That'd be cool. Dude. Look at that. Easy. Let's go. And now, I did it once. Spam it around. You really don't have to do that much, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Just like that. Bring this one back in. Darken that down just a hair. Scale it up just to kind of get things feeling scale-wise correct, right? Let's check that tree. What was going on over there? There you go, right? Everything's fixed. Pretty easy. I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to drag it into my asset sheet, and then we'll go from there. Boom. 2 pieces, done. Look at that. Easy. The cool part is, like, if you see pieces that kind of repeat, like for example, and this is kind of where your artistic eye really does come into play, right? You have this piece here. Check this out. That piece right there. You can see it again over here, right? You can't really see it anywhere else in particular, but right here, because we get a full dose of it, right? You kind of, you know, you can go in there and then like just grab your brush again, find the layer. Boom, tree 1. Right, and just like, you know, maybe lasso that part out and then just go pop. Oops, not red, don't do that. Right, and within a couple seconds, you're like, okay, that looks like a different tree at this point. And that's really all we're looking for, right? So just with that in mind, just remember, right? You know, there is a bit of artistry that does need to happen. You can't just expect this to do all the work for you. It just gets you most of the way. And the biggest thing with art, right? The biggest thing with design as a whole is if you're a lazy designer, right? It's not going to work in your favor. If you're lazy at photo bashing, if you're lazy at 3D, if you're lazy at asset bashing, it doesn't ever look good, right? So just try to like really understand that if you do these things, you know, it's a shortcut to do less work, but it's not a shortcut to finish a painting, like, I guess, in a lazy way. It is less effort, yes, but you still need to understand why we even do some of these things, right? So, cool. Bop. Just like that. Easy. Look at that. Dude, so simple. Now you turn it down, you're like, wow, that's so rendered. So good, man. Right? We're getting pretty close. And so now, right, it's just a bunch of rinse and repeat. So I'm going to take these background trees right here. Same exact thing. Take this, drag it back there, right? This time, you can't just, you know, I'm going to clip it in like usual, but you can't just leave things the way that they are, right? Because now you see there's a value difference. So what I like to do, set this on lighter color, or darker color, depending on kind of how you want to go about it, and then levels it out, right? Kind of bring in a certain amount of detail, something like that. And then you can like turn the opacity down, even like mask out some of it. Oops. There you go. To where it's kind of faded in, right? So now you don't see that like cut edge anymore, but we do get that, I guess it kind of feels like this tree that I'm putting in now is a little bit closer to the audience. You know what I mean? And something else to be aware of. I'm not flipping it horizontal. I try not to do that as much as possible, because if you flip it horizontal, the lighting that you established in your previous pass, you know, whatever that is, whatever you did, right? It starts getting convoluted, right? Because now your lighting is kind of flipping left and right. So for one, I do try to work a little bit more ambiently, but also I try not to change that directionality too much, because then you run into that issue. So just something to be aware of. Cool. Nice. Let's roll up. Let's see. Boom. Just gonna do some of that. There you go. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Right, dude. Forest done, baby. So I think I finished the first tree at 7:58 or something like that. It took a long time, right? So we started at 7:58 minutes of talking, promoting, talking shit, doing the painting, right? So 50 minutes of that. And then in the next 20 minutes, I finished 3 other trees, 2 other assets, and then the whole background, right? And this is basically as far as it goes, right? Within 10 minutes, you know, you have this painting done, right? There's some foreground flowers I got to do. But the whole background is basically where I want it to be. This is as far as I actually would take it. You can actually see it in a lot of my Blue Eye Samurai color keys. I'm actually bringing it up right now. Boom. Let's see. For example, like this one here, those trees. Oops. This one right here, sorry. No, it wasn't this one. That was a color key, but that wasn't it. Where's my color keys at? Did I not upload a lot of them? Maybe not. Is it this one? See, like, for example, this mountain right here, same pieces of this mountain. Actually, I did this one first and I did the other one later. But it's the same asset, same snow, same fog, same clouds, same all of it. And there's a whole series of these that we did for this sequence. And, you know, I just did it, you know, it's pretty simple. Same here, right? A lot of the trees and bushes and plants that you see here, the same ones you see on the other side, right? I just kind of used the same assets. And those pink trees, for example, I didn't design those. Those are from production. They gave me those trees and they're like, hey, these are the trees that are going to be in that location. Same with the building in the back. Same with the little bushes and shrubs. This kind of flower petal asset, right? Reused over and over. You can even see the same petal. It's just different colored, right? The one right here versus like the one right here, right? Seeing some of those trees in the back, those are somebody else's trees from production. I didn't steal those. Those are for us to use. And then, and then the same grass texture that I did here is the same grass texture that we did in a different set of images, or even here where, we have a lot of these kind of cave walls, right? It's the same asset. I just used it, 10, 15 different times, and I just changed some values here and there, right? Pretty simple stuff. But it just takes a little bit of like creativity, a little bit of know-how, and you're basically there, so. Cool. Let's do these flowers. Let's see. What kind of flowers do we want? How's life, guys? How's everything? Anybody impressed? Anybody like, hey, this is dumb. This is not art. Just curious.
I'm pissed. No, I'm just kidding. That's good.
It's a lot of like just being like I don't know, what is it? Very like just resourceful, because you don't have to paint everything from scratch. And I think that's a big thing that artists like, I guess, do whenever they first start. It's a lot of like, it's a painting that I have to do. It's like, I mean, you have to do it, yes, but you can be a little more efficient about it. And like within like an hour, you already have basically, I mean, it's not like done or anything, but most of it's pretty far along. But it's that initial shape design that you're kind of looking for that we need, right? It's that initial like, what are we actually trying to like say here? And then once you have that sentence, once you have that understanding, I mean, you're basically there. But you just have to be, you have to know that, okay, cool, all of my paintings have this wall in it. All my paintings have this tree. So just paint that tree once, right? If you have to do things over and over again, it just takes forever, Trying to look for flowers, and I just realized these aren't flowers. These are like, I don't know what they are. They're like dead leaves or something, but they look cool.
I got a question actually, Kenny. Kind of talking about reusing assets and stuff.
Yeah.
How is time budgeted out for that in a project? Like, I'm working on a personal project where I'm making like essentially my own bash kits to reuse. But when are you given time to do that? Because I imagine it's more like they want exact deliverables of certain things. Do they ask for a deliverable of like kit and resources, or are you doing these pieces and then adding to the assets sheet as you go?
I'm doing these pieces and adding to that. Like the way I'm doing it right now, where I'm like, I didn't have an asset sheet before this, and as I'm painting them, I'm just using the asset. That's how much time I get. I don't think I've ever been told like, hey, spend some time to make these assets because you're gonna have these paint. They just tell you, hey, I need a painting. And that's the thing for everybody to understand. When you're in a production setting, they don't tell you these things. You don't know. They're just like, hey, we need a color sequence. Here's the thing. And you go about it however you want. If you want to use gouache, if you want to use, MS Paint, you might find some resistance. But if it does the job, if it's the tool that can say what needs to happen, what they're looking for, you're probably going to be okay, right? There's even, I think Spider-Verse, there was somebody using clay, and it's like, it's fucking dope. It looks so good, and they get hired for stuff like that, which is awesome, but you have to understand that they don't dictate, generally speaking, they try not to dictate how you go about things. They tell you what you need, and you as the professional need to know what that means, right? They're like, hey, we need a color key sequence. Great. I give them the color key sequence. You can copy what some of the more senior artists are doing. This is what I do recommend for everybody here, or everybody listening, everybody watching now, present, in the future, right? Look at your senior artists and see what they're doing, right? And obviously, if it's somebody that's like, like dropping the ball a lot, right? Maybe not. But, if it's somebody that is carrying the project, that has a lot of respect on the team, look at the way they're doing things and copy. Don't be the hero. Don't try to be someone that tries to break the mold. Do exactly what they're doing. They're the senior artists for a reason, right? They've been on this production for longer. They know more than you. They've been working, whatever it is, right? If you're just starting, there's certain things that they know, and there's reasons that they do things. You can ask them, you can talk to them about it, But generally speaking, just follow exactly what they're doing. Look at their painting. How do you do that? Or how can I do something similar? And then you go from there, right? But going back to the question, whenever I get a painting, they never dictate what it is. They just say, hey, we need something that answers this problem, you know, and you could do that with lines sometimes. If it's a color key, probably not. But if they're like, hey, I need a design, you can choose to line draw that, you can choose to paint that, you can choose to model that. Depending on what they need, they're like, hey, we need a full turnaround on this prop. Should probably do a model of that. But it's like, hey, we just need some quick ideation. Painting or drawing is probably fine, right? And if it gets it to them faster, you'll probably be better off doing it that way. You know, whatever way is faster for you, right? But yeah, if you were doing like a kit bash, for example, they wouldn't give you a time for that. They wouldn't say like, hey, spend some time modeling this. They would probably say, hey, we need this level, we need this area. Can you design that? And then you spend the time. You kind of incorporate that into the scope of what you tell them. Because that's another thing that people actually aren't aware of. Maybe as a junior, when you come in, right? When you first start working, they'll tell you, hey, you have 3 days on this. Because generally speaking, you don't really know how fast production moves. But once you get to the senior levels, it's a lot of like, hey, how long will this take you, right? Like when I do freelance, like they'll give me when their deadline is, but that's not when I'm due, right? That's not when I need to that's when the painting needs to be done in their hands. That's not when I submit it, right? Because they're like, hey, we need something by the beginning of this month or by the end of this month or whatever, right? That doesn't mean that I turn it in at the beginning or the end of this month. That means that they have to approve it by then, which is a whole different thing. But, you know, I'll tell them, hey, this is going to take me 3 days or whatever. And I budget in that 1 day of, I'm going to be making a kit bash for this, right? That's generally speaking how we kind of go about things. But, you know, it just depends per project essentially. So sorry, that was a bit ranty, but yeah. Get some water. Good questions.
Hey, Kenny.
What's up, dude?
It seems like a lot of the stuff that you show us is like a lot of it is, you know, time saving type things.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've mentioned briefly before, like, how do you go about kind of like taking advantage of those time saving skills, you know, to, you know, possibly give yourself more time to do other things, you know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Sounds dirty the way you say it. I guess the way. Well,
yeah, that sounded pretty bad.
I guess what you're
I don't want you
asking
to,
the way. I guess what you're asking is
out yourself.
what you're asking is like, what are other things that I do to kind of help save that time, right?
Yeah, and then like, so if something that you know is probably like a multiple hour assignment, but you happen to have like a lot of things ready to go, that makes it way shorter for you.
Yeah.
You know, how do you go about working that into your proposal, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a good one. Okay, so when you first start, right, let's break this down the way like a junior would go about it and then a way a senior needs to go about it, right? So a junior, however long it's going to take you, should probably build that time. Because the time that it's going to take you to finish the assignment is probably longer than what they need, right? Because generally speaking, a student isn't capable of working at the speed that a professional is used to working at. This is, you know, just as a clarity or an understanding of what we're doing here, right? So as a junior, you need to be billing for your time, and sometimes you need to be billing less because let's say, for example, you need to do a painting and they'll give you 2 weeks, right? But you probably shouldn't be billing for 2 weeks because a normal professional would probably take 1, right? You know, it varies. It's hard to say with just this random idea, but the whole point is juniors usually take longer than necessary, and you kind of start racking up a larger bill just because it's essentially your fault, right? So, you know, you just kind of work that in, you know, because you can actually scare away clients because it's junior level work and then it costs twice as much. So that's kind of like, that's bad, right? But as you become more senior, you start being able to do things faster than people expected, right? Because they're like, hey, we have a whole week on this and you could probably finish it in a day sometimes, you know, or maybe even a couple hours. But what you don't want to do is charge for those couple of hours, because now you're punishing yourself for being fast, right? Because if I can finish faster than a normal artist, right? Let's say it's supposed to take somebody a week and I finish in 2 days. You don't charge for the 2 days, because now you're just punishing yourself. You have a lower rate because you work more efficiently. So you charge them how long it's supposed to take. And you need to be accurate with these time. You can't just make shit up, right? You can't just be like, oh, that's going to take 3 weeks. And in reality, it takes 1 or whatever, right? There's a level of like honesty you have to hit, but that's what they're paying for. They're paying for a professional that knows how to do something effectively. You know what I'm saying? So what you don't want to do is charge per hour at that point. You're charging what the task actually takes. And that's, that comes with experience. That comes with like, let's say your first production, they give you a keyframe painting, right? A pitchwork painting. And they're like, hey, you have 1 week to finish this, right? Cool. Now, generally speaking, 1 week. You go to another place, it's the same type of work, right? And they're like, hey, you have 1 week to finish this. So now most places, or not most, but 2 of the places, and talk to your friends, that this painting is going to take you, 1 week, or it's supposed to take you 1 week. And the industry, generally speaking, is happy with 1 week worth of time on that painting, right? So you charge for 1 week worth of work, right? Even though it takes you 2 weeks, takes you 2 days, you charge for the 1 week, because that's the industry norm, right? Because if you charge too little, you're punishing yourself. You charge too much, you could lose a client. Because now you're like super expensive for basically junior level work, or you're super cheap for like high level work. So, a lot of juniors don't have to worry about that, but you'll get there at some point. I don't know when that is. It could be 1 year. It could be, 5 years. It could be 10 years before you actually start doing things like that. But, you have to charge for what you're worth, right? If you're a senior level artist that's really good at what they do, you're worth a lot. If you're a junior level artist that, just kind of started, you're probably not worth that much. And you just have to understand that, So yeah, I think that's how I generally go about it. There's like nuance to it where you can kind of start, like, instead of working hourly, you can work for a flat rate, right? That's a lot of higher level artists will generally speaking start working like that, where we don't really charge hourly anymore, right? You can. There's times where you do, but there's also like, hey, we have a certain budget for this task. We need 10 paintings, or we need this whole pitch deck, and we have, 50 grand or whatever it is, here, right? And then that's it, right? That's all you get. And if it takes you, a couple weeks to do that, great. If it takes you a year to do, a year is probably very hyper unrealistic. But if it takes you like way too long to do that, that's all you're getting, So you can hire more people. You can, I guess do it all yourself if you can manage it or whatever it is. But those prices are dictated by, I guess what you're doing for that. What you're kind of bringing in. You know what I'm saying? So. Oops. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it just takes experience then. And like you said, maybe at the beginning, try to pay more attention to, because you'll probably get more expectations or whatever at the beginning, and then use those to kind of set limits for when you should be finishing things later on, or like when you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, you really want to kind of understand, like, at the beginning, there's a lot of things that you just don't know, right? As a junior level artist. And so when you start, just listen, just pay attention, right? Like, just see how long others take and be like, okay, this senior level artist took 1 day to do this painting. It took me 1 week to do this painting. And obviously we're not expecting you to perform at that senior level artist level, but there is a level of, you have to be able to kind of start working your way there. Because if you can't keep up with production, I mean, there's, there's not going to be a lot that you can do. Right. So you have to at least start competing at that level, right? But once you get there, then you kind of start, you know what pace to kind of give people, right? Because when people ask me, they're like, hey, we have this painting, we have this assignment we need you to do. How long is this going to take you? They'll ask you. And if you tell them 1 day, you better have it in a day, because your production is expecting you to have it in a day, right? Because you told them, you were the plumber, you were the professional, and you said, hey, it's going to take me 1 day to do this. And then you're like, oh shit, sorry. I actually meant 1 week. And they're like, we promised, the CEO or the higher level artist or the whoever that this is going to be done by tomorrow because you said so. And that looks very bad, right? On you as an artist. So you want to be really good at understanding that time. And like I said earlier, when you're a junior, they won't expect you to do that, right? Just because you probably don't know how to do that. But once you're kind of working, pay attention to those things, because it's not just art that you need to get better at. It's a lot of like these circumstances that you need to kind of start developing and really understanding about a, production to kind of do effectively, So. Finn Down says, I don't have a senior to learn off. I am the senior. Yeah. And that's like, there's that double-edged sword. Depending where you're at, sometimes you'll end up at a place where, for example, you might be the only artist on that team, or you're the most senior artist on that team, which is, it can be really good, because there's a level of, you're kind of playing multiple hats or wearing multiple hats and you're doing multiple things. But you also don't have anybody to kind of check you, right? You don't have anybody kind of watching over you or helping you out, because that's what a senior level artist is, I don't say supposed to, but generally speaking, that's kind of what they're there for. Like whenever I had questions, I would just ask my senior level artist, and they'll be like, oh yeah, it takes this long, or you should do this, or, they'll kind of help you through a lot of the stuff. But when I was by myself at other studios, it's hard because, there is nobody. For one, you have to do things, I guess, in a certain amount of time by yourself, right? That's hard. That's just hard, right? Because if you're the only artist on the thing, and for whatever reason, maybe you don't match up with whatever the task is, right? There isn't another artist to kind of pick up the slack. So you do find yourself in this scenario where you're having to just carry everything, and the project is not done until you do it, right? Cause a lot of, for example, whenever I was working at Sony and I was the only concept artist. So if I couldn't do it, we just kept doing it until you can. And that is stressful. It is a nightmare to do that because in a normal studio, they're like, oh yeah, you can't do it? Yeah, no worries, man. We'll get the more senior art. We'll get the art director to kind of look at it or whatever. And if you're the only artist, and I mean like the only artist, like there is no art director, there's a lot of pressure to do it because the production can't move until you do. You know what I mean? Like there isn't somebody else to save you. So that task can actually fail. And there's a lot of pressure on you to kind of do it. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that does kind of suck. But that's where I feel having people in your circle that can kind of help you out, right? If you're an artist that's working and you're, I guess you're starting to kind of find work and this and that, or maybe you find yourself as you're the only one at your studio or only one, doing a project, right? Maybe even freelance. Talk to your friends, right? Ask them, hey, how long did this take you? Hey, what would you do here? Obviously, if you're under NDA and stuff, I'm not recommending you break NDA or anything, but there is a level of, use your friends to help you figure these things out, because that's who's going to be the ones that are really kind of pushing you, right? Like me and my friends will kind of get together, once in a while or whatever. We'll just talk about things, right? And then sometimes I'll ask them like, hey, how long did this take you? Or even like if you see somebody painting online on Instagram, hey, how long did that take you? Just ask, because worst case scenario, they ignore you, right? Best case scenario, you get a good answer for whatever they're trying to tell you, right? But that's the artist network, right? That's where that understanding of, hey, we all kind of are at the very least we're supposed to be helping each other out to some degree, right? And, you know, same reason why we're doing this now is because we don't always have that, I guess, that network, and you know, that's kind of what we're doing here. So, but yeah, if you ever find yourself like that, definitely just ask, you know. And if anybody's wondering, like I've had students ask me, and I've had students come to me and they're like, "Hey, how much should I charge for this?" And I tell them, and they're like, "No way." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, like just do the math, right?" Because like if you for those doing freelance or like learning how to do freelance and various things like that, some of the numbers that you come up with can look dumb. Not dumb, but like just it just looks bad. Where it's like, there's no way they're gonna pay for that. They're like, yeah, man, that's how much they pay. And there's a lot of like, you just don't know because that number seems crazy. You're like, dude, I would do this for free, you know, because it's a painting, it's art, right? Because you're like, I love painting, you know, I do that, you know, this and that, right? But you know, I'll talk to students and I'm like, hey, you should be charging this much, and I'll break down the math for them, and they're like, oh wow, I've been working for less than minimum wage, you know, doing like entertainment design work, right? Like something that, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort to, and you can make a lot of money doing it. But you know, once you do the math where it's like, oh, I charge this much, and then you divide it up, you know, 40 hours a week, and then their rate, figure all those things out. And then it's like, oh, I was making $10 an hour. Oh shit. You know, when you should be making minimum 40, right? Minimum 35 to 40, depending on industry. But you know, just do the math, right? And sometimes those numbers look kind of big, and you can bring that down a little bit, right? If you're like nervous about it, right? But do the math first, and then you'll kind of have a better idea, right? So yeah, because some people they'll leave like half of the amount on the table, like, you know, like, and I'm not even talking about like a couple $100. I'm talking about like tens of thousands of dollars just because they're like, I didn't know, you know. And it's not your fault. It's just ask, you know, just ask people, because this is how you become a better professional, you know. The reason like I know some of these things, obviously I'm not always right, but I do know some things that others don't. It's because I just talk to my friends about it, right? I talk to my mentors. I talk to my leads even, right? I just say, hey, how much did this cost you? How much did this, what was this for you or whatever? And they just tell you, you know, hopefully they tell you. If they're stingy about it, like, fuck that guy. But, you know, but yeah, they should, ideally, you know, they should be there to help you out, so. One of the statements was, I've experienced doing an art task that took longer than I should have. I didn't set a reasonable time for myself and I didn't have a familiar workflow. Yes, that happens so much. And this is kind of where like a big thing where the reason I work this way, right? Or a big reason I work this way is because it's consistent. I know how long something's going to take, right? I'm not really guessing anymore, right? Like whenever I do this, I can tell you how long this painting will take, right? If I did it in a normal production setting, right? Because obviously we're slowing things down for everyone to kind of watch and experience, right? But in a normal setting, I'd have all 6 of these within the day, and even to like this level here, I'd probably have all 6 done, just because I know how long each process is going to take me, right? So for artists that are just starting, that is really, really hard to know. It's just difficult because why would you know, right? Because you've never, you know, had to do it. Because this isn't the first time I've done this, right? I've done hundreds of color keys. So I kind of know how long it's going to take me almost every single time because, you know, it's not my first time doing it. And so whenever you are first starting as an artist, you know, I always recommend work in a studio first because they'll tell you how long something is supposed to take. They'll be like, hey, you know, we have about 3 days for this. This is about average, you know, or whatever. And you know, that's how we kind of start off. They inform you how long something is supposed to take. But when you're working on your own, sometimes you're like, the numbers are off because in a class setting, right? The only experience that you can actually base this off of is your class, right? But that's flawed because in a class setting, for one, we artificially break things down. Like in my classes, I slow things down by like weeks, right? Because we'll do one step at a time every single week for 5 weeks, right? And so in reality, you're doing all 5 of those steps at once. So what took 5 weeks to kind of do, I would do in a day, right? And that's what, 35 times faster than what you're used to doing it at. That's overly dramatic. But, you know, oftentimes when you turn in a final, they'll give you like 2 weeks, right? 2-3 weeks sometimes to do that painting. In reality, you'll get 1. So it's at least 3 times faster. And if you don't have a class is not a good measurement to do that off of, just because the timing is wrong, so to speak, right? So just kind of know that. But that's where, like, I guess that experience comes in. Just do it. You know, you're gonna mess up a couple times. I've messed up a lot of times doing freelance and just thinking that it would take not that much time or whatever I thought it was gonna take, and it ended up being I don't want to say a loss of money, but it just wasn't worth it, essentially, right? It happens. That's your fault. You live and you learn. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do about it. The very least, the best thing you can do is hope that your client was happy. That's my biggest thing. Is above all else, make sure your client is happy, right? Because, like for me, for example, I did some freelance. I think it was 2020, something like that. You know, just some clients came to me. We did a thing. Cool, right? It turned out okay. But they came back to me recently and they're like, hey, we want to do it again, right? And, you know, maybe I didn't charge enough that first time, or I mean, I did, but, you know, like there's a lot of things that could have went wrong, but at the very least, if they're happy with your work, right? You can kind of work with them again, right? And you can, now, you know, right? If you took, you know, let's say you gave them a 1 week kind of estimate, but it actually took you 3 weeks or whatever. Now, you know, tell them, okay, cool. You know, last time, maybe don't tell them this, you know, but oh yeah, now you work it into your estimate. We're like, okay, cool. This is going to take me about 3 weeks. And if they ask you, they're like, oh, hey, this took, you know, whatever time last time, what's going on with that? I'll just tell them, oh, you know, I kind of underestimated, you know, and tell them, like, because of like the feedback loop or whatever it was, you know, there's a lot of like explaining that you might have to do, but, you know, it is what it is, right? But you live and you learn, right? It's just know that you just got to pay attention. So, yeah, I've done so many of those. It's terrible. Like it's because like sometimes, like, because a lot of times you actually don't know how long something's going to take, right? Because you've never done it, right? If you've never done color keys before, why would you know how long it takes to actually do a color key, right? There's a lot of those things where you just, you know, why would you know? There's no reason for you to know, right? But, right, it's, you know, do it once, learn, right? And then hopefully by the next time, base your estimate off of that, right? So. Kyle says, I experienced doing an art task that took longer than I should have. I didn't set a reasonable time for myself. Oh yeah, okay, cool. Saying, was tasked to do more than 10 artworks. I did try to do minimal style to try to make it doable, but I still ended up burnt out. Yeah, definitely could do better. That happens all the time. Dude, like, you'll get clients that they'll give you a team's worth of work to one person, right? And that happens all the time where it's like, oh yeah, because they just have a task. They just, you know, if they're used to doing this, right? If they're a client that is very, I guess, like comfortable with working with artists, a lot of times they'll know. They'll be like, oh yeah, you know, well, let's divide this between 10 artists or whatever it is, right? Or 5 artists, 2 each or whatever, because maybe it's like a 1 month deadline type of deal, right? That will happen a lot if you're working with an artist or a client that's pretty good. If you're working with a client that maybe they have experience with an artist, but they don't really like quite do it that often, that's where you'll kind of run into that problem sometimes where they're like, hey, here's 15 paintings. And can you do this by the end of the month? And you're like, you do the math and you're like 15 paintings, 4 weeks. You know what I mean? Like that's like what, 4 paintings a week? You know what I mean? And that's like, I could barely do 1 painting a week. And that's 4 finished paintings. That's not like thumbnails. That's like finished, production ready paintings. And you know, you just, that's where the professionalism has to come in. You have to tell them, oh yeah, that's too much, right? Yeah, we could do this if I help hire three, 4 more people, right? But that's your leeway, right? A lot of artists don't realize you can hire people. You can bring people into this project, and you can choose sometimes, right? Because there's times where I'll get a task and it's just too much, but I'll be like, hey, this is too much for me to handle. But let me hire on the artist to help me out. And they're like, yeah, sure, you know, whatever. And maybe the rate will stay the same, right? Or maybe they'll double it or whatever. But you have leeway. You're the professional here. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of artists don't, I guess, realize for the first little while. In class, the teacher tells you what to do, right? In my classes, I say, hey, you do this homework, you do this is how long it should take. In a studio, when you're a junior, they'll tell you, hey, it takes you, you have 3 days to finish this task, whatever, right? But when you're working your own, when you're a mid-level to senior level artist, they'll ask. They inevitably always start asking you after a certain point, how long will this take you, right? And they don't, a lot of times they don't care if it takes a certain amount of time or whatever. They just want accurate reading of what it is, because, their production, they're trying to they're trying to time things. There's people with a schedule, they got to meet certain deadlines. They'll ask you, hey, can you do this in 1 month? Can you do this in a certain amount of time? You tell them yes or no. If you can't do it, sometimes they'll be like, oh, so how can we make it so you can, if they really want to work with you? Or they'll be like, okay, cool, we have another artist we want to call. Here's half of the assignment, And that's really what you want to kind of start doing. Understanding that you're the professional, you're the plumber here. When you call a plumber, it's not like you're telling the plumber how to do his job. They just say, hey, it's going to take us, I need these things. It's going to cost you this much. It's going to take this much time. That's what a professional does. As a student, you just kind of like, you just do what you're told, right? And it's very uncomfortable sometimes for a lot of beginner artists to kind of move into like that freelancing field, because there's a lot of that and you're just not used to it, So, yo, what's up, Randy? Thanks for showing up, man. Yeah, dude, better late than never. Cool. Do you guys see me do that one flower and then just stamp it around like a, like a genius? But yeah. So a lot of the same things, right? You're kind of noticing there's a pattern here, right? Because this is how it is. And at this point, right, we're basically kind of there. Maybe I'll spend some time kind of cleaning up that character, but all the flowers are done, right? My asset sheet is basically there, right? The tree, the kind of silhouette of the branches. And then I have my flower, right? And then it's as far as I generally take it. And we're just kind of adding a little bit more detail. But what I want you to notice, first and foremost, I am not changing the color palette. Everything is basically the same. There's some things here and there. There's a little more refinement here and there, but we're not really changing anything, because I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this, because a lot of people, when they start for the first time, especially because like students, they're not, I guess, they're not held under the same parameters as a professional. They'll change things, because I get this a lot in my class where like, oh yeah, I tried to do it, it didn't work, so I just changed it, right? In a professional setting, you cannot do that, right? If they give you a thumbnail, like sometimes the thumbnails aren't even yours. Sometimes you get a color key from a different artist and they're like, hey, can you finish up this painting? That senior artist got busy. We need him on something else. We need her on something else. And they're like, cool, yeah, I can gonna render some stuff. But you cannot, I emphasize, you cannot change what they've already established. This has been approved, and if you change anything, you're unapproving things and you're wasting time and you're dragging production down, right? Just remember that you cannot change the direction that the painting is going. If the colors are a certain way, you have to maintain that. There's a level of control, there's some nuance there, right? I kind of added a little bit of green to the overall like gray bluish tree in the back. But if you squint down and you actually watch me change it, nothing actually changes, right? It's just more sophisticated. There's more nuance here and there, but overall it's the exact same image, right? So Cool. Let's see here. What am I going to do next? Oh yeah, do the character. All right. For those wondering how I do characters. Boom. Let's see. Let's grab this. Turn that off. Turn that off. All right. Cool. So grab these two plus that. I'll grab this as well. There will be a copy. Boom. Yeah, I got that head. So I'm just kind of separating things. I did kind of just paint it all on one layer. I wouldn't normally do that, but I wasn't expecting to actually paint this character. But it was requested, so I will oblige. Let me cut this out here. Boom. Cool. All right, so I have here a thing, right? I'm gonna lock that. And I'm gonna start kind of getting the shapes in there in the right kind of like feel and vibe, right? So I need to adjust some shapes because right now there's even a hole in the helmet, so I need to fix that, right? So, oopsies. Boom. Kai says, what platform you guys use for freelance? There is none. I don't know if there is one, to be honest. If anybody actually does have any suggestions, I would love to hear it. Just because they just call. You know what I mean? You can do cold calls as well. That does work sometimes, and I've done that before. Where, for example, if there's a client that I've worked with before, right? Oftentimes I'll be like, "Oh, hey, I'm open for freelance. If you're looking for anything, just let me know. I'd love to help out." Right? I kind of keep things like chill like that, right? But as far as like a network of like how LinkedIn has like a job board essentially, right? I don't have anything like that. But I'm also not very good, so I don't know. Probably somebody else probably knows. Actually, what I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna do the pro move. Do that. Dude, look at that. Easy. Oops. Oops. Nope. Nope. There it is. Nope, not that one either. There you go. Look at that skin colored ornament. Don't do that. Let's turn that into a better color. That's not fleshy looking. You know how it is. There you go, right? Gold-ish, bronze. There you go. Looks a lot better. Sick. Let's go, dude. This head looks a little bit weird. It looks like a chiseled kind of like jaw, so I'm gonna not do that. There you go. Right, we want some like roundness. Randy says, I often take the time to know artists I admire and learn from them. It usually also leads to great connections as an added benefit. Yeah, I think that's a big thing to really understand. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people, whenever they kind of like start, it's a lot of like, oh, I hope someone's gonna contact me out of nowhere. You know, they don't do that. You know, like how many times, like a lot of you don't do that just naturally. You know what I mean? I think that's a big thing for me as well, where maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an asshole. Who knows? But it's a lot of like, just, I guess, waiting for calls or waiting for these things. And you never really know. Just reach out to people and ask, talk, right? Because sometimes, right? Sometimes they won't say anything. Sometimes, oftentimes they won't, right? But the thing is, you don't really know that's the case until you cross that bridge, right? So the best thing you can do is just talk, right? I do try to answer as many people as I can. Sometimes, I either miss it because of Instagram, or like there's like the if I'm not following you, it'll put it in like a hidden message box. So if you are one of those people, I am sorry. But generally speaking, I do try to respond, and I just try to help whoever I can. But I do tell everybody, like, I am looking for effort, right? I am looking for, if you don't show any effort, right? If you're like, hey, how do I get better? I'll ignore that. I'm gonna straight up ignore that, right? I just tell you that straight up. If you don't show me anything, you don't give me anything, you're not getting any feedback from me, right? Because that's easy to ask, and it doesn't show any effort of any sort. So, but the ones that I do respond to is, hey, I did this painting. What do you think, right? Or I did this thing, right? I put in effort. What do you recommend I change, I do, whatever, right? The reason I answer those versus some of the other ones is because there's effort there, right? You did something. You're like, hey, I spent however much time to do a thing. I wanted your feedback specifically. Here you go, right? But if you hand me here's my assignment from a different class, I might answer it. I guarantee you, I probably won't enjoy it. If I know you, you're cool, right? But if I don't know you, right, it's one of those things where it's like, you want to show effort. And when you talk to an artist, you want to show that you're actually trying, right? Because we know the difference, right? Generally speaking, right, when an artist is talking to somebody, or especially somebody that's more senior, right, they know how long something is supposed to take. They know what effort level kind of needs to kind of happen there. You know what I'm saying? So try to show that you are trying. If you're not trying, it comes off, very obviously, right? If you don't put any effort, if you don't ever do anything that kind of makes it easy for me to kind of see that effort, you're not gonna get much feedback, not from me at least, right? Maybe some people do. I will not, just because, if you don't put in effort, I don't put in effort, right? But if you did something, right, and like for example, Randy's one of them. He just sent me he was doing a thing, he sends it to me and asks for feedback, right? That's all I'm asking for, right? And it's not even like for me. It's just the idea of like, he's doing a thing, and I'm like, cool, that's great that you're doing a thing, and I'd love to help you out, and that's all it takes, right? Just show effort, because you're not showing effort. Because I get a lot of them where it's a bit of like, hey, how do I become a concept artist, or how do I become? I'm like, you're not really asking a direct question. You're not really asking something that I can actually answer, because at that point it's like we can just. We can go into a whole thing as to how you can do that better, right? So, but yeah, show effort, you'll get effort back, right? That's usually what I'll recommend to all my students and everybody, and people in my Discord as well. If you don't show me any effort, I'm not, it's really hard to replicate that. It's really hard to reciprocate that, right? So. This kid's got mile-long bangs. Let's go, dude. Let's go. I was watching this show. I think it was on Netflix, but it was I think it was Old Enough, right? It's this Japanese show where these little kids, they go, basically they run their first errand essentially, right? Their parents send them off like, hey, can you go pick up groceries or go to grandma's house to drop this off or whatever. It's a simple task. It's like them walking down the street. I kind of like, whenever I was doing this project, I felt like that's where this was going, because that's kind of what it is, right? It's like, hey, can you take this thing to grandma, essentially? And so this project kind of like reminded me of that. So that's kind of where I was going with it. Boom. Oops, not like that. What the hell? There you go. Dude. All right. Her neck looks super long right now. His or hers, right? I don't know yet. But yeah, we're getting there. Let's see. And to be honest, I wouldn't take it. Like, I would just make the anatomy changes here, because at this point, right, a lot of this would already kind of be established where, you would already have a character design. If you're at the color key phase, there's character designs already, right? This is never that early on. So there would already be something. So I would like cut and paste from there. Or it's not really that necessary to kind of really get that. Cause they just need to get it on model at that point, right? So, but you find that face again. Sick. Dope. Kid looking spiffy. There you go. All right. Maybe it's like, I kind of like when the neck's like cut off like that. Not cut off, but like it looks younger, doesn't it? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Who knows? When you see too much like neck, it just feels like they're older. But when you shorten it up, it feels like younger. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. That's why I'm not a character designer. I don't know shit. Let's see. Boom. Any other questions? We're rounding out the time now, so we're you know, I can talk for a little bit longer, but just curious if there's anything else before we get going. Random question. What was something you struggled to learn / understand in your own art journey? Oh yeah. Something that, okay, so I preach on it a lot. It's the biggest thing that I ever talk about, right? But it is something that I had a really hard time understanding for the longest time, is designing a story, right? I've said this, you know, I said earlier today, I say it quite often, but a lot of it's like understanding that there is an experience here, right? There's a design, there's something, and it's not just art. A lot of times, you know, especially in classes, there's this idea where, you know, we're told to like, hey, draw better, paint better, right? You know, render better, this and that. There's a whole bunch of like art things, technical things. But once you actually get to the concept art industry, like when you actually start working, a lot of it's like, oh, what's this feeling? What's this idea, right? Because, you know, when you go to a museum and you always see those like pretentious artists, right? But like, you know, it's always like, oh yeah, this makes me feel whatever, you know what I mean? There's this whole like feeling associated with it, right? And that's, I think, the biggest thing that we as artists forget. We are artists. We design experiences. Somebody is supposed to experience this a certain way. Somebody is supposed to understand something about this image, right? So what is that? And I think that's one of the biggest things where we kind of forget, right? Because I teach an environment design class. So I teach world building 2. And I go, hey, you know, what are you saying with your comp? And they're like, traveling stick man. He's in a place. And I'm like, no, that's not, you're not saying anything with that. The dude's just there. Right. And then we cover like, you know, composition, like heavy composition topics. And then we cover like, you know, a lot of like things, obviously, you know, I can't go too far into this, a whole class. Right. But there's a lot of things where I'm just like, we're just talking about how do we tell a story with the things that we have at our disposal, right? Composition, shape, color, lighting, all of that. And there's all these things that we can say with those tools. And for the longest time, I just didn't get that, right? And it's funny because I learned this in a storyboarding class. When I took storyboarding at Noman, it wasn't like particularly because of Noman. I mean, I took the class because Noman made me take it. But I guess I got forced into a situation where I was forced to understand, you know, cinema, right? Movies, where they do compositions that mean something because there's a story to be told, right? If you've taken any kind of storyboarding class, you know, you should know that, where they make you kind of like break down why a composition is a certain way and how do you tell this better, this and that. And once I got that, I think my designs got a lot better because of it. Because, you know, after a while, when you're a beginner, right, a lot of it's like, you know, congratulations. The thing that you put on a page doesn't look like trash. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot of like, nice, you rendered that well, right? But after a while, you start hitting this wall because you're like, okay, I can paint really good and I can draw really well. No one's looking at me. And a lot of my designs don't pass, right? In a production setting, if your designs aren't like getting approved, you know, it kind of worries you sometimes. And you're like, I can draw really well. My render button's working, right? I clicked it really hard. I clicked it harder than last time, you know? And a lot of times you might not understand why that's the case. But when you realize that your design isn't hitting any chords with anybody, nobody cares about cut lines. Nobody cares about, you know, textures. That's the last thing that people worry about. They worry about story, design, and emotion, right? And so whenever we kind of like, or whenever we're taught in school, it's a lot of the technical things, but when you're in a production setting, it's a lot of those abstract ideas. And once you kind of start getting that and understand what that means, it helps to kind of, it helps you kind of understand, I guess, what our job is just a little bit more, you know? So, that was a big thing that took a long time. And it, like, I think environment designers have a really hard time with that idea. And the reason for that is because we're taught to kind of put things in an environment in a very technical way, but character designers hear that all day. Storyboarders hear that all day. And I think that's a big reason why I always tell my artists, right, or whoever, take a character design class, take a storyboarding class, do other things. If you took World Building 1, World Building 2, World Building 3, Perspective, Viscom, congratulations. You're a stock standard environment artist, right? But if you take some of these other classes, they think differently than you. And that's really what's going to set you apart. If you're somebody that understands design at a deeper level, generally speaking, you're worth a lot more, right? But it takes a second. It's, you know, we don't always like kind of know that right off the bat, right? So, but yeah, so that's I mean, this, to be honest, this is probably how far I'd actually take this character. And you know, it's not really that far, right? It's not like that good. It's pretty mediocre, I will say. Maybe I'll make her smaller. Something like that. There you go. Boom. Boom, boom, done. Right? Pretty simple, right? I don't really need facial features. We can handle that later. But the whole point, right, is just looking at what it was before, looking at what it is now, right? A lot of this is, you know, the trees in the back. It took me 40 minutes to do the 50 minutes to do that one tree in the back, this one right here. And then the rest of the time I was able to finish the rest of the painting, right? And you can see how quick that was. I painted one tree, one flower, one set of leaves, one character. And now I can actually use that character in a lot of my paintings. And very quickly, you can see how I would take one painting and basically do all 6 of them to the same degree, right? I only have to paint one grass plane, and then the tree's already done, the leaves are already done. And then I just have to paint like a rock, right? Which actually I should probably do in this one right here, right back there, but we'll take care of that later. So hopefully this all makes sense. I think, a big thing that when people see paintings is the assumption that I have to do all of them. I have to, you know, paint everything from scratch every single time. And we really don't, right? Especially for a painting like this, where it's a color key. It doesn't have to actually be taken that far. Just like what I was showing you guys with the with my Instagram, right? Looking at some of those color keys, you start realizing, you know, it's not really that finished, you know? I mean, look at that guy. You know what I mean? I just took the logo, I just made some shapes. He has one of those like Hulk hand type of shapes. It's just a block. It's a cube, you know, but you know there's a hand there, and there's a photo bashed torch onto that, right? But they just need to know what the tone and feeling of the environment is, right? Yeah, maybe there's better color keys out there. I mean, there's 100% better color keys out there, but understanding that these did pass, these are production color keys, you know what I mean? Same with these, right? There could be better artists out there, but you see, I did one tree, I think it was this one right here, and I just duplicated it over and over again, right? This leaf is the same as this one. I just, you know, duplicated it around. So pretty simple. And then I just did some lighting and stuff like that, right? And this ground plane, I took from something else, right? I took from one of my other paintings that I did, a very similar shot. And you can use all these pieces like really quickly. So, but cool. With that in mind, just a reminder for everybody kind of watching now / got to the end. Thank you, right? So thank you for watching for the past 2 hours, right? But next month, this coming month, we're gonna be getting into level design, right? I'll show you the flyer again. I spend a lot of time in this flyer, so hopefully you guys are like looking at it. Where is it at? Digital vegetables, assets, live stream schedule. There you go. All right. So for March, we're doing level design. I want to emphasize that this level design is not a true level design course. If you're looking to be a level designer of sorts, this isn't it. But if you want to be a concept artist, that understands level design, this is for you, right? So we're going to cover block out, set dressing, lighting and mood, rendering. A lot of these terms are used, like for example, if I did a rendering thing, I do lighting and mood again, or even like in this stream or this past month in February, we did lighting and mood, but it's different this time, right? We're understanding different things according to level design. So don't worry about like a lot of repeating information. It is different. I'm not going to be teaching you like how to light a scene. I'm teaching you why we light a scene, right? Same thing here, or with these essentially. So hopefully that makes sense. But if you'd like to join the live stream plus to get feedback, right? Because I think the biggest thing to really understand is the feedback is really where you kind of get the most growth. You can follow along. I absolutely highly recommend that if you're watching and don't want to be part of the live stream plus. But some of the biggest gains really happen when you get feedback, because that's direct. That's a direct correlation to like some of the issues that you're struggling with. So March is coming up. We'll start with it next week, next Tuesday. For now, I'm going to continue on with the rest of my keys throughout this week to try to get all that done. And then hopefully you'll kind of see where my color keys kind of end up, right? So hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully you learned something, right? Just understanding like when we look at this, these color keys, a lot of these comps aren't out of the realm of what most artists are capable of doing, right? Most like entry level / advanced student level, it's not at a level that's actually that high, but it's the understanding behind it. And that's a lot of the things that we're going to be covering from this month, next month, so on and so forth. You'll start seeing that the quality bar isn't really as high as you might believe, because these color keys would work in production. I mean, you even saw it in some of the examples that I gave you. These are probably cleaner, to be honest. But understanding is why we do what we do, and paying attention to how these transitions from, like I was talking about with week 1, where we had a lot of like screen direction, understanding composition, right? Understanding why she's so small, right? I wanted to show how small this person is compared to their environment. So every time I try to create this feeling that she's tiny in this large world, right? Warmer colors means safe, cooler colors means danger, right? Linking the warm colors to her, because this is, she goes into the forest for these things, and still, it means something to her, but it's blinding her, because that's why these shapes are so large. And then boom, the realization that she's in a spot that she shouldn't be in, right? And as we're kind of like moving through the story, there's a lot of different transitions. There's color transitions from warmer palettes to cooler palettes. There's screen direction, all these things that we talked about. And hopefully you can kind of see how whenever we're doing this, it's not just putting things on a page and thinking about rule of thirds. There's a whole story mechanic behind it that has nothing to do with how well you paint. If you can start thinking better, you can really start making better, right? So, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense. In the YouTube chat, Ian's asking, are these demos still being posted on Discord? They will be. I've been kind of waiting till the end. That way we can kind of like see them better. Because sometimes I get to like a weird stage where it's like, that's pretty ugly. You'd never want to see that. But I will be posting these soon. They'll be posted next week. At the end of every month, this is kind of when I'll post like the final thing to kind of show where we went. So that'll be next week. So hopefully that makes sense. But cool. If there's no questions, I mean, thanks for watching. I really appreciate everybody kind of sticking through. For those that have like kind of been follow along, especially you all in the live stream plus like section, like really following along and doing these things. So, hopefully you're seeing these huge kind of like growth spurts, right? I think really like breaking down why these things are, because this isn't a level thing, right? A lot of this isn't an ability that most artists aren't able to comprehend. It's the ability to even just know that it's a thing. That's kind of what we're aiming for here. So most like beginner level students to advanced level students can apply this in most of their paintings. But obviously the better you paint, the better you design, the better it's going to be, right? But it's just things to think about. You don't need to hear this multiple times. You don't need to practice this over and over again. You just need to know that it's a thing, right? Because once you know it's a thing, it's hard to ignore it, right? So yeah, next week I'll show the finals. We'll kind of do some final notes on that, but we're moving into level design. So I'll break down how we go about that next week. And then, yeah. So if you'd like to be part of that, please join the Livestream Plus. Thank you so much for watching. You know, it's been a good 2 hours and 15 minutes, but yeah, I guess for now I'll catch you next week.